My wife was in the emergency room, put there by her lover's wife. The doctor's voice was laced with pity when he called me. I rushed to the hospital to find her lying on a gurney, her face a bloody mess. The moment she saw me, her eyes flashed with a desperate plea for help. "The family needs to sign off and cover the surgical fees," the doctor said, holding out a clipboard. I stared at the face, at once familiar and yet completely alien, and asked, "Who is she?" "I think you've made a mistake." The light in my wife's eyes froze, then died. The spark in Chloe's eyes went out, inch by agonizing inch. Those same eyes that once gazed at me with adoration, that crinkled with laughter at my stupid jokes, were now just wide, stunned circles of disbelief, followed by a tidal wave of despair. Her lips trembled, flecks of blood mixing with her saliva, but she couldn't force a single word out. The doctor's clipboard hovered in midair. The professional sympathy on his face hardened as his tone grew hesitant. "Mr. Cole, this is your wife, Chloe Evans. Are you certain you don't know her?" My gaze was a scalpel, calmly tracing the mangled geography of Chloe's face. The face I had kissed 1,000 times was now swollen and distorted, a grotesque canvas of purple bruises and angry red gashes. But I felt nothing, not a flicker. "I'm sure, doctor," I said, my voice so steady it scared even me. "I don't know her. If you've made an error, I suggest you contact her real family as soon as possible." The tears finally broke free, carving clean tracks through the blood and grime on her cheeks. She struggled to sit up, but a spasm of pain shot through her body, and she collapsed back onto the gurney with a choked cry. It was a sound of agony, but beneath it was something 1,000 times thicker, the pure, primal fear of being utterly abandoned. I didn't look at her again. I pulled out my phone. My fingers, cool and steady, swiped across the screen, finding the number I knew by heart. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Davis, I need you at Northwestern Memorial Hospital right away. There are some urgent matters to attend to." My voice cut through the chaotic hum of the hallway, clear and cold. The doctor's expression soured. He made one last attempt. "Mr. Cole, the patient's injuries are serious. There could be intracranial bleeding. She needs surgery as soon as possible." I cut him off. I am not her next of kin. I have no legal authority to sign that document. I paused, turning my full attention to him. The fluorescent lights glinted off the lenses of my wire-rimmed glasses. "Tell me, who was it that called me?" The question caught him off guard. He stammered. "It was the woman who called 911. She said she was the wife of the patient's lover. She gave us your number." The lover's wife. The words were a poisoned dagger, plunging straight into the rotten core of my marriage. A small, mirthless smile touched my lips. It was a purely mechanical gesture, devoid of any warmth. I turned and walked out of the room. The rhythmic click-clack of my dress shoes on the polished linoleum floor sounded like a death knell for our relationship. I didn't look back. I completely ignored the desperate glare I could feel burning into my back. At the end of the hall, I saw a well-dressed but disheveled middle-aged woman. She was screaming hysterically into her phone, her face a mask of triumphant rage. That must be the one who did it. Mark Thompson's wife, Brenda. A pitiful creature, and an executioner. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. My world had shattered the moment I answered that doctor's call, and I was the one, calmly and deliberately, putting the pieces back together. The smell of antiseptic in the hospital lobby was overpowering. I had just reached the main entrance when a blur of motion lunged at me with the force of a hurricane. Ethan, my mother-in-law, Sharon, her normally well-maintained face twisted in a snarl of fury, grabbed the collar of my shirt. Her nails dug into my skin. "What the hell is wrong with you? Chloe is hurt, and you pretend you don't even know her. Are you even human?" Her shrieking turned every head in the lobby. I stood perfectly still, letting her shake me. My eyes drifted down to the hand clutching my collar. "Sharon, let go of me," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable command. "Or I will call the police." "The police? You dare call the police?" Sharon laughed, as if it were the funniest joke she'd ever heard, her other hand jabbing a finger toward my face. "You ungrateful bastard. Chloe married you, cooked and cleaned for you, built a home for you, and now that you made it big, you think you could just kick her to the curb? I'm telling you, not a chance." She conveniently edited out the part about Chloe bearing my children. It seemed a sliver of her knew that our being childless after all these years was a well-known fact. I calmly corrected her. Sharon, first, we don't have any children. Second, I think you know exactly what your daughter has been up to. The color drained from her face for a split second, a flash of panic from someone whose bluff had just been called. But just as quickly, the mask of the belligerent victim was back in place. What about my daughter? She was out with friends and had a little fall. As her husband, the least you could do is show some concern instead of making sarcastic remarks. You're going to sign those papers and you're going to pay for that surgery, or you'll have to deal with me today. She was escalating, tried to use volume and sheer unreasonableness to seize the moral high ground. She picked the wrong person. I slowly pulled my phone from my pocket and, right in front of her, hit the record button. The small red dot pulsed on the screen like a cold, impartial eye. Sharon, are you positive your daughter just had a little fall? I enunciated each word clearly, making sure the phone's microphone picked it all up. Because I'm about to receive the hospital's preliminary diagnosis, as well as the official police report. Both will state very clearly that her injuries were the result of a physical assault. What you're doing right now is creating a false narrative. If you lie to the police, that's called filing a false report. It's a crime. Her tirade stopped dead. She stared at the recording icon on my phone, her eyes darting nervously. Her bravado was visibly deflating. But people like her never give up easily. The next second, she plopped down on the floor and began slapping her thighs, wailing, "Oh, why is my life so miserable? I raised a daughter only for her to marry this heartless monster. My daughter gets beaten up, and her husband doesn't lift a finger. He just threatens an old woman like me. Is there no justice in this world?" Her performance successfully drew a larger crowd, many of whom were now shooting me dirty looks. I watched her act, feeling not even a trace of disgust. It was just pathetic. Just then, a calm, steady voice spoke from behind me. "Mr. Cole." I turned. Mr. Davis, my lawyer, had arrived. He was dressed in an impeccable suit, his hair perfectly combed, his eyes sharp and professional. He paid no mind to Sharon's theatrics on the floor, walking directly to me. He handed me his card, then turned to face her. "Ma'am, my name is Davis. I am Mr. Cole's legal counsel." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the inherent authority of his profession. "Regarding Ms. Evans's medical expenses and all subsequent matters, my client, Mr. Cole, has entrusted me with full authority. If you have any demands, please direct them to my firm through the proper legal channels." Sharon's wailing cut off, as if a switch had been flipped. She stared, dumbfounded, at the immaculately dressed lawyer who had appeared out of nowhere. The arrival of an attorney had instantly transformed this family melodrama into a legal battle, a field she was hopelessly outmatched in. A hospital security guard chose that moment to intervene, politely but firmly asking Sharon to leave and not disturb the peace. As he helped her to her feet, she shot me one last venomous look, but under Mr. Davis's icy stare, she just stomped her foot in frustration and shuffled away. Minutes later, Mr. Davis and I were sitting in the Starbucks across the street. The afternoon sun was bright, and I adjusted my glasses. "Mr. Davis," I want a divorce. I showed him what I'd saved on my phone, the evidence I had discovered long ago but had been holding on to. Intimate text chains between Chloe and another man. Receipts from boutique hotels. Records of her secretly transferring funds from our joint account. "My terms are simple," I said, looking at my own blurred reflection in my coffee. My voice was flat, without a ripple of emotion. I want her to walk away with nothing. The next day, the hospital called. Chloe was awake. She was asking for me. Without hesitation, I called Mr. Davis and we went together. Stepping back into that hospital room, the antiseptic smell seemed even stronger. Chloe was propped up in bed, her face covered in thick bandages, only her eyes and mouth visible. Those eyes were now filled with a mixture of resentment, fear, and a sliver of carefully placed hope. When she saw me walk in, she rasped my name. "Ethan." I stood at the foot of the bed, maintaining a safe, impersonal distance. Mr. Davis stood beside me, notepad out, all business. It felt less like a visit and more like a deposition. Tears started rolling down her cheeks again. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, Just give me one more chance. I swear, it'll never happen again. I wasn't thinking straight. Her sobs were theatrical, each word trembling with manufactured remorse. It sounded pitiful. A few months ago, it would have worked. I would have folded instantly. But the part of me that was capable of that had died the moment I found out. My mind, against my will, flashed through a slideshow of our life together. The day we got married, when she curled up against my chest and whispered that she wanted to spend forever with me. The time I pulled an all-nighter for a project launch and came home to find her waiting with a bowl of hot soup. The brutal 3-day coding marathon I endured to close a deal just so I could afford the designer handbag she'd been eyeing, and the wave of satisfaction I felt when I bought it. All those moments that had once been my greatest source of warmth were now razor blades, slicing away at a heart that was already in shreds. I spoke, my voice sounding distant, like it belonged to someone else. You weren't thinking straight. I looked at her, as if she were a complete stranger. Chloe, how long has this been going on? 6 months? A year? Longer? My question was a surgical strike, cutting right through her facade. Her face went pale under the bandages, her eyes darting around the room, unable to meet mine. And what about the money? Why did you transfer $100,000 from our joint account? That was the down payment for my parents' new condo. I didn't. Who told you that? Ethan, you can't just accuse me of things, she shot back, a last, desperate attempt at denial. Mr. Davis said nothing. He simply stepped forward and placed a thin folder on her bedside table. On top was a bank statement, with the $100,000 wire transfer clearly highlighted. Underneath were several high-resolution photographs. In them, Chloe was kissing another man outside the entrance of the Langham Hotel. The man's face was in profile, but it was clearly him, Mark Thompson. Chloe's gaze fell on the photos and the bank statement, and all the fight went out of her. It was as if her strings had been cut. Every lie, every excuse, crumbled in the face of cold, hard proof. She finally broke. Covering her bandaged face, she let out a series of choked, despairing sobs. Ethan, please. For the years we've been together, please give me another chance. I swear I know I was wrong. She was pleading now, trying to weaponize our shared history. I looked at her, a weeping mess, and felt nothing but a profound sense of exhaustion and disgust. Chloe, there's no trust left between us, I said, my voice cold and final, stripped of all emotion. I only came here today to tell you one thing. Mr. Davis has the divorce papers ready. You will sign them, and you will walk away with nothing. If you refuse, I have no problem making all of this public. I'm sure Mark Thompson's wife would be very interested. My ultimatum left Chloe completely stunned. She stared at me, unable to believe that the man who had once catered to her every whim could say something so ruthless. In the end, she didn't sign, muttering that she needed to think, but immediately began testing the waters about dividing our assets. I just laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. I didn't waste any more words on her, leaving Mr. Davis to handle it. Outside the room, my mother-in-law Sharon was waiting. She must have heard the news from Chloe, because the second she saw me, she charged like a bull. Ethan Cole, you snake, you worthless piece of trash. Chloe is lying in a hospital bed, and you're trying to divorce her? And leave her with nothing. Is your heart made of stone? She learned her lesson and didn't get physical this time, opting instead for a full frontal verbal assault from the moral high ground. Sharon, if you want to make this a public fight, I'm ready, I said, looking at her calmly. But be prepared for your daughter's dirty laundry to be headline news right alongside it. My words shut her down, but only for a moment. Still refusing to give up, she started shouting in the hospital corridor, spinning a wild, exaggerated tale of how I was abandoning my sick wife and was an ungrateful monster. Soon, the gossip started to spread through the hospital. Some busybody even snapped a picture and posted it online with a clickbait headline, "Wife brutally beaten. Husband responds with divorce papers." The narrative was catching fire. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts from unknown numbers, all spewing hate. I wasn't surprised. I instructed Mr. Davis to prepare all our evidence for a counteroffensive. I also reached out to a couple of reputable local journalists, getting ready to release a full, detailed statement at the opportune moment. That's when an unexpected visitor arrived. A man in a sharp suit, looking every bit the successful professional, walked into Chloe's room carrying a fruit basket. It was her lover, Mark Thompson. I watched him from around the corner. Seeing that Chloe was alone, he seemed to relax. But when he turned and saw me standing down the hall, a flicker of pure panic crossed his face. He quickly composed himself, adjusted his tie, and strode toward me. "You must be Ethan," he said, adopting a condescending tone, trying to seize control of the situation. "We need to talk." He tried to pull me aside for a private chat. "You Mark, right?" I didn't move, my voice flat. "What do you want to talk about? The fact that you've been sleeping with my wife? Or the fact that you coached her into transferring $100,000 from our joint account to bail out your failing business?" My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet hallway, each word landed like a grenade. Mark's face turned a sickly shade of gray. He never imagined I knew everything in such detail. He glanced at Mr. Davis standing beside me and realized this wasn't going to be an easy fix. His tone hardened, taking on a threatening edge. "Look, Ethan, let's be reasonable. There's no need to burn everything down. It's not good for you. It's not good for me. You don't want everyone knowing you're a cuck, do you? Think about your reputation." Hearing that, I smiled. A cold, contemptuous smile. "Mark, I think you've got this backward." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "You're the one who needs to be reasonable, and you're the one who should be worried about his reputation. What do you think would happen," I continued, "if I sent the photos of you two, along with the bank transfer records, directly to your wife? And maybe CC your company's HR department and board of directors?" Tiny beads of sweat began to form on Mark's forehead. I recorded my entire conversation with Mark on my phone. That recording, along with all the other evidence, went straight to Mr. Davis. No sooner had Mark left than his wife, Brenda, arrived. She must have seen him on the hospital security cameras because she stormed back to Chloe's room, absolutely livid. All hell broke loose. The sounds of things crashing, a woman's terrified screams, and a man's angry shouts echoed from the room. The scene was pure chaos. When Brenda burst out of the room, she saw me. She froze for a second, then rushed over, her face a storm of emotion. The first thing she did was apologize to me. "Mr. Cole, I am so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't keep my dog on a leash and allowed him to ruin your life." Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her gaze was sharp and clear. "I have even more evidence on that bitch and my husband. Timelines, hotel receipts, text messages. I have everything. If you need it, it's yours." This was a woman pushed to the brink by rage and betrayal, but she was also thinking strategically. She knew we were now allies. Our common enemy was the shameless pair in that room. With the evidence upgrade package from Brenda, my position was ironclad. I had Mr. Davis draft a comprehensive public statement. We didn't use emotional language. We just laid out the facts. Chloe Evans had engaged in an extramarital affair and conspired with her lover, Mark Thompson, to fraudulently transfer marital assets. My supposed coldness and abandonment were nothing more than the legal and protective actions of a betrayed husband. At the bottom of the statement, we attached redacted copies of key evidence, screenshots of their texts, a $100,000 wire transfer, and a few photos of them kissing outside the hotel. We released the statement through several online news outlets, and it immediately went viral. The tide of public opinion turned with the force of a tsunami. The same people who had been calling me a scumbag and monster a day earlier were now flooding the comments with sympathy for me, the victim of the year, while directing their fury at Chloe and Mark, the disgusting cheaters who give humanity a bad name. Chloe's social media accounts were found, and the comment sections became a cesspool of vitriol. Internet sleuths figured out where Mark worked, and his company's phone lines and social media pages were instantly overwhelmed by angry citizens. In her hospital bed, seeing the tidal wave of online hate, Chloe had a complete meltdown. She called me, screaming, accusing me of being cruel, heartless, and trying to destroy her. Finally, she threatened to jump out of the hospital window if I didn't retract the statement and drop the divorce. In response to her threat, I had Mr. Davis calmly notify both the hospital administration and the local police department. I made it clear that Chloe was in an unstable mental state, that I was not responsible for any action she might take, and I strongly urged the hospital to place her on psychiatric watch. Meanwhile, Mark's life was imploding. The company he worked for was publicly traded, and the scandal caused its stock to dip. He was now facing termination. Drowning in his own problems, he turned on Chloe, pressuring her to take all the blame to save his own skin. Just as expected, the once devoted lovers were now at each other's throats. After the public opinion shifted, my mother-in-law, Sharon, went quiet for a couple of days. Realizing she couldn't win a PR war, she tried a new tactic: emotional blackmail. She somehow got my parents' phone number and began harassing them, trying to guilt them into intervening. But she was met with a surprising firewall. My mother, usually the gentlest of souls, shut her down with uncharacteristic firmness. "We support our son's decision 100%. Your daughter made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. The Cole family has done nothing to wrong you." After hanging up, my mom sent me a text. "Ethan, don't be afraid. Your father and I are your biggest supporters. Do what you have to do. If the sky falls, we'll be here to hold it up for you." Staring at those words on my screen, my heart, which I thought had turned to ice, felt a flicker of warmth. 06 Once Chloe was stable enough for discharge, I officially filed for divorce. The evidence binder we submitted to the court was as thick as a phone book. It contained the complete chain of evidence of Chloe's infidelity, the bank records of her fraudulent transfer of marital assets, and even the recording of Mark Thompson admitting to the affair and the financial dealings. On the day of the hearing, Chloe wore heavy makeup, a futile attempt to hide the bruises and the exhaustion etched on her face. Her lawyer tried to twist the narrative, claiming our marriage had broken down because I was a workaholic who neglected her, which led to her momentary lapse in judgment. They even had the audacity to suggest that her injuries were a result of domestic abuse from me. It was utterly laughable. Mr. Davis didn't engage in a war of words. He simply and calmly presented our evidence to the judge, piece by piece. First, the official medical report from the hospital, corroborated by a forensic examiner. It clearly stated Chloe's injuries were consistent with a repeated physical assault, and the time of injury aligned perfectly with the time I received the call from the ER. For that entire period, I had a rock-solid alibi. Second, Brenda Thompson's testimony. She took the stand and admitted to assaulting Chloe, detailing how she had discovered the affair that destroyed her family. Third, the complete financial records of the $100,000 transfer, along with credit card statements showing how Chloe had used that money to buy luxury goods for Mark and pay for their stays at high-end hotels. Each piece of evidence was a sledgehammer, demolishing their fabricated story. In the courtroom, Chloe resorted to her old tricks. She began to cry, delivering a tearful monologue about her devotion to our home and my cold, heartless betrayal. Her performance was convincing, but a court of law is a place for evidence, not an audition. Against the black and white proof, her tears seemed hollow and ridiculous. Her lawyer, who had started the day with booming confidence, was now sweating and stammering, unable to form a coherent argument. My mother-in-law, Sharon, caused a scene outside the courtroom, trying to disrupt the proceedings with her shouting, until a bailiff threatened her with contempt of court. In a dramatic twist, Mark Thompson was also subpoenaed as a key witness. Under questioning from the judge, he reluctantly admitted to the affair with Chloe and the existence of the financial transactions between them. The outcome was never in doubt. Based on the overwhelming evidence, the judge's preliminary findings indicated that Chloe was the party at fault in the dissolution of the marriage. She was ordered to provide a full accounting for the misappropriated $100,000. Chloe just sat there, stammering, unable to explain herself, her face as white as a sheet. After the hearing, Chloe's lawyer approached me, attempting once more to negotiate a private settlement, hinting that Chloe would be willing to concede a larger portion of the assets. I looked at him and said only 6 words: "We'll let the law decide." 07 The court's judgment came down quickly. It was exactly as I had anticipated. The divorce was granted. As the party at fault, Chloe was ordered to repay the $100,000 of marital funds she had fraudulently transferred. Furthermore, due to the nature of her misconduct, she was barred from receiving any other share of our joint assets. In short, she left with nothing. Chloe, predictably, announced her intention to appeal. She wanted to drag out the process, to keep me entangled in her drama. At the same time, she and her mother started posting long, rambling screeds on social media, painting me as a villain in a desperate attempt to win public sympathy. It was a pathetic effort. The public wasn't buying it. Faced with the mountain of evidence, their sob stories only earned them more ridicule and scorn. I was prepared for this last-ditch effort. Mr. Davis immediately filed for an injunction to freeze all of Chloe's personal bank accounts, ensuring she couldn't hide what little money she had left or use it to fund a frivolous appeal. It was a financial checkmate. Then I took a second step. I contacted our banks and requested copies of all credit card statements from the past several years. I discovered that Chloe had opened several supplementary cards under my primary account. Over the last 6 months, these cards showed a pattern of suspicious charges, cash advances, and maxed-out credit lines totaling over $50,000. Without a moment's hesitation, I reported her for credit card fraud. After a brief investigation, the bank's fraud department blacklisted Chloe, permanently destroying her credit score. They also informed me they reserved the right to pursue criminal charges. This meant her financial life was over. No loans, no credit cards, no mortgages. She would even be barred from high-cost travel like flights or staying in decent hotels. Meanwhile, the scandal had made Mark Thompson radioactive. Under immense pressure from his company, he completely threw Chloe under the bus. He released his own public statement, claiming he had been deceived and manipulated by her, painting himself as another one of her victims. Chloe was now utterly alone. Seeing her daughter financially ruined, saddled with debt, and socially ostracized, Sharon finally broke. She tracked me down and cornered me in a lobby of my office building. The once arrogant, shrewish woman was now a picture of desperation. She looked defeated, her face etched with humility and fear. Then, in front of dozens of my colleagues, she dropped to her knees. "Ethan, I'm begging you, please, let Chloe go. She knows she was wrong. She really does. We accept that she gets nothing, but you can't push her off a cliff. Please." She clutched at my pant leg, her body racked with sobs. I looked down at her, my heart of stone. "You reap what you sow." I pulled my leg away, my voice devoid of any warmth. "Sharon, she chose this path. Now she's paying the price." I walked past her and into the elevator, leaving her wailing on the cold marble floor. A few days later, I filed a motion to enforce the court's judgment, officially beginning the process of collecting the $100,000 she stole and the $50,000 she ran up in credit card debt. Chloe's so-called friends, who had flocked to her when she was living the high life, now avoided her like the plague. Her social life had completely disintegrated. With everything settled, I felt a massive weight lift from my shoulders. I opened my laptop and started searching for flights. It was time for a long vacation, a grand opening ceremony for the rest of my life. As expected, Chloe's appeal was dismissed, and the original judgment was upheld. She lost any and all claim to my assets. At the same time, collection notices from the credit card companies began arriving like an avalanche. Unable to pay the massive debt, she was sued by the banks and officially listed as a delinquent debtor, her name and face added to a public database of deadbeats. Cornered and with nothing left to lose, Chloe went on a final, crazed rampage. She started posting my private information online, my social security number, home address, and cell phone number, accompanying it with vicious, defamatory lies. She even hired online trolls to launch a coordinated smear campaign against me on various platforms. I had anticipated this. I had Mr. Davis collect all the evidence and file another lawsuit, this time for invasion of privacy and defamation. But then, things took a turn even I hadn't expected. While investigating the troll farm Chloe had hired, the police discovered something else. To pay the trolls, she had been running online scams, creating fake sob stories and soliciting donations from unsuspecting strangers. Her actions had escalated from a civil dispute to criminal fraud. Chloe was formally arrested. After learning her daughter was facing prison time, Sharon collapsed from shock outside the police station. But it was too late for tears. The final divorce decree arrived. My marriage to Chloe Evans was, in the eyes of the law, officially and irrevocably over. The court also ruled in my favor on the defamation suit, awarding me a significant sum for damages. I donated every last cent of it to a charity that provides legal aid to victims of domestic and financial abuse. It was my way of closing that chapter for good. I spent a weekend purging my home of her presence. Our wedding photos, her clothes, her bags, her makeup, all of it was boxed up and hauled to the city dump. I watched as the apartment, once filled with the traces of her life, was slowly emptied, reverting to the state it was in before she ever entered it. I felt no sadness, no satisfaction, just a deep, profound sense of peace. That marriage had been like a raging fever. It almost burned me alive, but in the end, it left me with a permanent clarifying immunity. I quit my high-paying but soul-crushing job as an IT project manager. With the money I'd saved, I partnered with a friend and started a small software development firm, focusing on projects I was actually passionate about. I started working out, hitting the gym 3 times a week. The feeling of being drenched in sweat felt grounding, real. I began to travel, just me in a backpack, visiting all the places I'd always wanted to see. I signed up for cooking classes and a photography workshop. My life became full, scheduled on my own terms that I felt like I was coming back to life. At an industry conference, I ran into Brenda Thompson, Mark's ex-wife. She was also divorced and had started her own successful marketing firm. She looked incredible, poised, confident, and sharp. She walked right up to me with a bright, genuine smile. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, it's been a while. You look good." She raised a glass of champagne in a toast. "And thank you for the evidence you shared back then. It helped me cut ties cleanly and prove Mark was hiding assets. He walked away with nothing, too." We smiled at each other, a shared understanding passing between us, the quiet bond of survivors. We talked about our lives after our respective divorces and discovered we'd both emerged from the wreckage stronger and more resilient than before. We exchanged numbers, agreeing to grab coffee sometime to talk about business, about life. A friendship built on mutual respect and a shared history began to form. My parents were thrilled with my new life. My mom stopped pressuring me to date, saying only, "You seem so happy now, Ethan. That's all that matters. Don't rush things. The right person will come along when you're ready." I started posting photos from my travels online. One picture of me on a mountain peak at sunrise, arms outstretched, was captioned, "The end of one thing, the beginning of everything." The comment section, once a toxic wasteland, was now filled with messages of support from friends and even strangers. I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I started dating again cautiously. I no longer threw myself into relationships. I learned to observe, to listen, and to prioritize genuine connection and mutual respect. I knew now that I deserved better. Old friends who heard my story through the grapevine reached out. Some were shocked, others offered sympathy, but most were impressed by how I had handled the situation. One of them, who had once advised me to just be the bigger man and forgive her, because a happy wife means a happy life, called me specifically to apologize. "Ethan, man, I was so wrong," he said. "I see it now. With people who have no integrity, any act of forgiveness is just an act of cruelty to yourself." My story resonated with more people than I expected. I started getting invited to speak at small gatherings, share my experience to help others who felt trapped in toxic relationships. I talked about healing from betrayal, using the legal system for protection, and rediscovering your own worth. My new venture took off, boosted by my growing reputation as a resilient and principled entrepreneur. I had transformed from a heads-down coder into a respected voice in my field. One day, a strange package arrived. Inside was a letter. It was from Chloe, sent from prison. The pages were filled with her cramped handwriting, a long, rambling mess of remorse, a longing for freedom, and nostalgic recollections of our past. She asked if I remembered our first date or the off-key love song I sang when I proposed. She begged me to visit her, to find it in my heart, to forgive her. I read the entire letter, my expression unchanged. Then, I walked into the kitchen and turned on the gas stove. The blue flame licked at the cheap paper, instantly consuming her words. I watched until it was nothing but gray ash, feeling neither hatred nor pity. That part of my life, along with the woman who defined it, was simply gone. True closure isn't forgetting. It's when a memory no longer has any power over you. I only heard about the fates of the people who had wronged me in bits and pieces, through mutual acquaintances or random news snippets. Mar Thompson was fired after the scandal. In his divorce from Brenda, the court found he had committed adultery and fraudulently hidden assets, and he lost everything. Jobless, divorced, and with his reputation in tatters, he ended up taking low-paying gig work to survive. After Chloe was imprisoned, Sharon suffered a major health crisis. The relatives and friends who had once fawned over her because of her connection to me now wanted nothing to do with her. She tried to contact me for financial help several times, but I instructed my office security to never let her in the building. I had Mr. Davis send her one final message. You and your daughter brought this upon yourselves. I later read in a small news brief that she had passed away in a county hospital, alone. Her funeral was barely attended. Reading about their downfall felt like reading a story about distant strangers. It had no emotional impact. It was all just over. I sent a generous final payment to Mr. Davis, thanking him for his professionalism and dedication throughout the long battle. He mentioned that Chloe was a model prisoner and might get out early for good behavior. But even then, what future did she have? A convicted felon with a ruined credit history and a long gap in her resume. Her life was, for all intents and purposes, over. I sold the apartment, wanting to be completely free of its memories. I got rid of everything that tied me to that life. On the balcony of my new place, I set up a small table and a comfortable chair. I brewed a pot of tea and watched the city lights flicker to life below, enjoying the profound, uninterrupted quiet. The air smelled clean. My life had started a new chapter. 12. A few years passed. My company was thriving. I had met a wonderful woman, intelligent, kind, and supportive. Our relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect and partnership. It was calm and sweet. On the weekends, I volunteered as a crisis counselor at Northwestern Memorial, the same hospital where it had all begun. I had even gotten my official certification. Returning to that place no longer stirred any negative feelings. It was just a place where people needed help. One afternoon, after finishing my shift, I was walking out of the main entrance, and I saw her. It was Chloe. She was out. She was wearing plain, worn-out clothes. She was rail-thin, and her face was gaunt. Her eyes had the dull, empty look of someone who had spent years being invisible. She saw me at the same time. I was getting into my new car, my partner smiling by my side. We must have looked like we were from a different planet. Her body jolted. Her first instinct was to shrink away, to hide, but she seemed frozen to the spot. She just stared at me from a distance. Her expression, a chaotic mix of emotions I couldn't begin to decipher. I met her gaze. For a single, silent moment, we looked at each other across the chasm of years. I felt no hatred, no anger, no pity, no sympathy, nothing. Just a quiet acknowledgement of a past that had been turned to dust. She finally broke eye contact, her head bowing as if under an immense weight. She turned and, with heavy, shuffling steps, walked away, disappearing into the anonymous bustle of the crowd. Her back was stooped, her silhouette one of defeat. My partner gently squeezed my hand. "What is it?" she asked. I shook my head and smiled at her. "Nothing. Just someone I used to know." We got in the car and drove off. The afternoon sun was warm on my skin. I took a deep breath, smelling the clean city air. I had been through the fire and come out whole. My new life had already begun. The future was bright, and it was all mine.